this morning to show you the finished product. All right, let me take you around. So coming up to the front door here, it leads into my patio area where we have built this raised garden bed that wraps all the way around in an L shape and then leads to the 4x4 garden box here. So you can kind of see what we've done. We've run the irrigation so that it feeds from the faucet there all the way over through the ground there up into the bed, and it wraps all the way around. Now, we have fit a ton of plants in this bed. It's crazy. You can see down in here kind of how we've got it planted. You can see how we've got the plants planted. We've got plants 11 inches apart with onions in between, and it goes that way all the way down in the bed over here. There's actually going to be some more room for more plants. So as the weather warms up in somewhere around the beginning of April, I'll be planting some other types of plants, like probably a ton of peppers because I love spicy food. And that is the way we've got it set up here. The irrigation line runs all the way down, wraps around. Over here, I have a few potted plants. I'll probably be adding some more.
We can't plant the garden without the plants. You could start from seed, which is much more inexpensive, but to be sure that we're gonna have a successful garden, we got some plant starts today, including things like lettuce, some different kinds of broccoli, some Napa cabbage, of course, my favorite dino kale, more lettuce, some, I think, collard greens. And of course, we got some more, I think, Swiss chard. So, you know, I picked these plants, many of these plants for a certain reason. So some of these plants, such as the Swiss chard and the dinosaur kale, these are long-lasting plants here, even in the 100-degree weather of Las Vegas. The plants could last up to a year. So you could plant this one plant right here, or this plant here, and you could be harvesting a full 365 days before you actually have to replant something else. So that's a much better value than, say, planting some lettuce that we got over there that may grow for the next maybe 90 days until it starts getting too hot, and then that plant is done, and then you have to plant something in its place. Now, another thing that we got that's quite valuable is in this bag right here, and what we got is we got some onion sets. So these onion sets, although they kind of look a little bit tattered there, they're still alive. These guys are very, very tolerant of dry conditions. But we'll just plant each one of these onion sets, and each one of these onions will turn into an onion bulb, you know, that you could eat. I do like that I could literally grow maybe like if I grow like 3 of these bunches, that's enough onions for me for the year, because I'll harvest them all. I'll put them in a paper bag in a dark place, and this is nice arid climate, dry here. And most of my onions will last for a full year. I'm eating onions now that are harvested last year, although some of the onions have been sprouting, and they're actually growing into new plants, which I'll then plant out into my garden to grow new ones for next year.
If you watch John Kohler with Growing Your Greens, then you know what a huge advocate he is of the tree collared plants. So I have one here that he planted, he brought for me. It's just over here in the corner, and it's looking beautiful, and it's kind of featured spot. It's going to grow nice and tall. It's going to be awesome. So I'm pretty excited about that. I've got just a ton of variety, more variety come in April. It's going to be really great. So now it's time to check out some footage from last night's Q&A with John and Josh. So I'm just sitting here with Josh and John. We finished everything up, and we're just going to take a few minutes and just kind of talk about. I want you guys to be able to hear from them. You know, what advice they have for me, what tips do they have, especially in a small space like this, and just kind of talk about maybe some of the challenges that I might face, and you know what they advise that I do to kind of overcome some of those challenges. Because I imagine for a lot of you, if you're not already gardening, it can be pretty intimidating. Even actually the irrigation system. I've watched a video from John. You can check it out on his channel. Video showing how to put in an irrigation system. It's really simple, but sometimes if you've not seen something done or you haven't done it before, then it can be a little intimidating or overwhelming. And I really want you to be able to see how easy it is to do this kind of stuff at home by yourself with inexpensive supplies. For the purposes of my video, I just kind of showed you generally what we were doing gardening, but if you want to see the more technical side of what we actually did, please check out the video on John's channel that he's going to be uploading, and you'll be able to see in more detail what we did today. But I guess I'll just kind of turn the time over to John and then to Josh and kind of hear from them what their thoughts were in creating this garden for me, and we'll go from there.
All right, so any specific questions you have for me, or?
Yeah, so in the past, biggest, I think, problem I had was the watering issue, which you helped me with today by getting this irrigation system put in, and you've talked a lot about that in your videos, just the importance of having an irrigation system, especially here in Las Vegas where it's so hot. So what are some of the other, I think, maybe challenges you think beginner gardeners like myself make, like what are challenges that they have and mistakes that they make, and what would you counsel me to be aware of?
Sure, so I think the main thing is there's a method to the madness. Like everything I do, there's a reason for what I do. And so you might see, oh, we put this in, but there's specific things that I did that's very important to do, and if you don't have all your ducks lined up, it's going to be a failure. So number one thing is I don't necessarily recommend container gardening. The pots here in Las Vegas, especially in the summer, I mean, I have a hard time keeping my potted plants alive in the summer because it's just really difficult. So, I mean, you want to get a big thermal mass, get a nice raised bed, like we built today. You can even get a big bag bed if you're renting, just something with a lot of soil in there so it's not going to dry out as quickly. Also get an irrigation system like we put in today. Actually, Rachel did most of the work to actually put in the irrigation system today. It wasn't me. And so once I showed her how to do it, she totally felt comfortable, and they did a great job. And so the other thing is adjusting the irrigation timer is very important. So currently I set it as a default for go off once a day, every day for 5 minutes at about 1 o'clock p.m. And that's for this season right now that we're in, where it's fairly cool. I don't want it watering too early when it's the soil's too cold or anything like that. We're going to wait till it warms up a little bit. But as the weather gets warmer and warmer, maybe daytimes now are maybe hopefully in the 60s here, maybe hitting the 70s, so that's good for now. And then maybe once it starts to warm up to be 80s in the day fairly consistent, so you're going to maybe add another cycle. So you could do maybe I'd start doing right when it heats up, so I'd maybe do 1 o'clock, and then maybe I'd do 3 o'clock right at the heat to cool that soil down so the plants could take up more water. Then maybe get it up into the 90s, add a third cycle, and then you could have 11, 1, and then 3, and then once it gets into the hundreds every day, then you could have another cycle. So these cycles don't all have to be I don't know if it's programmable on your timer that you could have cycles of different times, or it's always the same exact time. But you'll have to play with the timing, because I just set it for 5 minutes just as a standard example, but really you have to dial it in for your specific environment. So here you're going to want to check the soil. You can dig up some soil around the area where it's watering, and if you go down 8 inches and it's dry down there, that means you need to water a bit more until you get maybe down to 8 inches. And then once it gets watered to 8 inches, then you can pretty much stop the cycle. So you may only need to water 2 minutes or 3 minutes. It just depends on the water pressure and how fast the water's coming out. So that's probably one of the biggest things. And the other thing that's super critical besides the watering system that you already have built in now is planting the proper plants. This is very important if if you especially live in a desert like Las Vegas here. It's especially challenging to grow food in the summer when it's 100 degrees. So you want to give yourself every possible advantage by planting the plants that will do well in our climate zone. So we planted lettuce now, but hey, in the daytimes now, it's maybe 60 degrees if we're lucky, maybe 70, hopefully soon. And that's a really nice temperature for lettuce. But if it's 100 degrees out every day, you're not going to be planting lettuce. Even if it's 80 degrees out every day, I wouldn't be planting lettuce either. I'd like it to be below 80. Now, if it gets if it gets that hot, there are other things you could plant, but these are not so commonly known, such as Egyptian spinach, Malabar spinach, longevity spinach. All these crops will really thrive in 90 or 100 degrees, right? And so I would encourage you to check my channel for some other leafy greens you could grow, but other summer plants that do well here, eggplants, number one, they love the heat, and okra. Number two, actually, you don't want to overwater the okra. And just check out my channel for more hints on what specific plants, and just see what I'm growing, because I make a video every season showing what I'm growing, and just plant some of those plants. Like, oh, John planted this in the summer, I'm going to plant it too, and guess what? You'll probably be successful. So that's probably the basics, I think.
That's good, yeah, and just based on what he's saying, you can definitely see where I would have failed in the watering department last summer, because some days I got out there, some days I sent my 10-year-old out there to water, so who knows how many minutes it was getting watered, and that was in the morning, and then, you know, often again at night when I got home. But that's just a really unreliable system, and you're kind of setting yourself up for failure. And a lot about what I talk about on this channel is just, you know, kind of thinking smarter and trying to be more efficient, and the hand watering is not a good idea. So definitely irrigation system.
The other place you might be able to get away with it, but
Yeah.
not in Vegas during 100-degree weather.
Yeah.
That forces you to really think. That forces you to think ahead. Just think. We're spoiled in Northern California in the 707 grow code with the climate we have. You know, one thing is she's got these brand new starts in there, and it's still a bit early, and there's some days they're chillier than others. Some days it'll heat right up into the 70s, maybe 80s already, the end of February. It's going to be important, Rachel, that just like when a human is thirsty as the weather gets hotter, just as John said, that you adjust those irrigation cycles, and don't just purchase one of these nifty timers. It was so awesome the way John did a true one-stop shop with Rachel, all from just any Home Depot. You can build this system in a less challenging environment than Las Vegas. So my point is, okay, you've got your fancy little timer, you've put your drip system together, which, sure, she had a bit of anxiety, but it's just like a kid learning Lego for the first time. If you put it together right, it's going to work right. She's also spoiled by, I view this as a luxury, the fact that her garden is not insanely huge, taking over every square inch of her backyard's real estate, unlike her neighbor to the right. And thus, you know, when you try and extend from one or two faucets for a whole piece of property, your drip system, you know, you do run into issues where things like pressure regulators, and it becomes, for a guy like John with his mind, he has a very active mind, an interesting challenge, probably a fun one, but also a frustrating one when different parts of the drip system are not putting out the same amount of water. So Rachel likes to spend quality time by herself when she has it. She's a busy working woman in the backyard on her patio. So we advise, John and I both advise her to, when you're chilling with your glass of organic wine and, you know, your quality time alone back there, turn on that irrigation and just get a sense for how long of a cycle you need. He just did a rough guesstimate, and as many years of experience and thousands of videos later, John turned around and asked me, he was a little insecure, do you think 5 minutes is too much? No plant, especially a new transplant, wants to drown in water. No human wants to sit there and put their ass in water and just be soaking wet. So overwatering is as dangerous and as bad as not watering enough. So take your time, you know. You set this nice system up, you've laid it all out. A huge part of today, all getting done in one day, was this man's mind and mapping it out. He found a piece of cardboard from the back of the drip timer box, and he sketched out, it was like a Lego thing, you know, you just sketch out a thing. And then my wife Leah and myself, it's been years, installed drip systems before. It came back to me, you know, very familiar fashion. But these ladies, Rachel and Leah, had never installed drip in their lives. Figured it right out. Very good to have a guide, you know, someone with a bit of experience. All of you who don't have experience with drip must know someone who does. Pick their brains. Don't be afraid of asking, you know, the handy, every street corner, every suburb has a handyman, a helpful handyman that lives in your hood. You know, pick their brains first. Like, hey, I'm trying to grow food in my backyard. You have any experience with drip? You know, and there's tons of videos, and John can show you. you. So it's actually child's play, that part. The part that gets tricky, like I said, is when the plants are young, you're in between seasons. Some days are going to need more water, other days not. So don't just be like, oh, I'm plug and play now. I've got my timer. I'm going to run it 5 minutes, one time, 24 hours a day, and be done with it. And then don't come crying to John when after he's tried to warn you to be creative with your watering cycles and to be observant, as Rachel must now be, when, suddenly your plants have all wilted because they were overwatered, or they've all wilted because they were underwatered. So it's just like a human being, Vitamin W, almost as important as vitamin L, the love vitamin. Vitamin W, water, it's the most important vitamin, more than all the real vitamins put together. She's got a wonderful template out there that anyone can have. Anyone can have it. From, a grandma in Tennessee, to a Vietnam vet, God willing, that's being forced to still be in a wheelchair. This is all wheelchair accessible. You hop out of your van, come back here, hang out with your plants. Make sure they're being watered and loved. That's it. And the quality time this lady's now going to spend with her own food factory in her backyard, that was what she was giggling today about. She had a sense of space in what was previously just another concrete patio. Now it's a food factory. Every bit as important as the microbial web of life that you build in your soil, as the mycorrhizal fungi and their messenger systems, the mysterious messages of life going across a redwood forest and that are going to be built in her natural living colony that you're now going to create. The challenge ahead in a harsh climate is just to keep that thriving, living microbial system alive and well. It's actually not that hard to do. It's more what you don't do. You don't use chlorinated water. You don't overwater. You don't over-fertilize. You don't ever use chemicals. And you don't let your neighbors round up again. So atta girl and a huge atta boy to this man, for doing this out of the kindness of his heart. Out of the kindness of his heart. Amen.
Yeah, I feel really blessed, and I think we talk a lot on my channel about just creating good relationships and surrounding yourself with positive people that believe in the same things as you. And I really had a really good time the last couple days, not just because I got to see this exciting garden come about, but because I got to be surrounded by people that value the same things as me and want to provide meaning in the world and live a meaningful life with purpose and direction and share with others and believe in natural living and healthy eating and taking care of your body and the planet. So it's really cool. I would encourage all of you to find other people that value the same things as you and bring them into your life, because there's so many negative people out there, and there's so many negative things. The world is a harsh place and you're bombarded with all kinds of different messages. But if you just create that little circle of positivity and surround yourself with good people that value the same things and uplift you and allow you to uplift them, then really everything is possible. And I'm really excited about this garden. I'm so grateful to these two men for coming to help me, because I knew that I possessed the energy and the drive to work hard to make it successful, but I just needed a little help to get started. And that's the great thing about YouTube. You can check out John's channel. Boogie Brew puts videos up sometimes, and then there's tons of other good YouTubers too, so support them. Check out their channels, find out tips for everything that you're trying to do. And so that's just join me on this journey to watch me as I learn out in the garden my mistakes and my successes, and I'll share with you kind of what I'm doing and check in, show you what's growing, show you how I'm harvesting, and it's going to be a good time. And I really want you to join me on this journey. So please leave in the comments if you started a garden and what plants you're planting and why you're planting them, and if you've got your children involved and you're getting them excited, getting them to eat more leafy greens. And it's good. The world is a good place. I'm just so grateful. And please, like I said, check out John's channel, check out the Boogie Brew website. Links to everything below. So there you have it, my new garden setup. And I'm feeling pretty empowered. Like, now I'm going to have proper irrigation. I've got a good setup as far as with how the sun rises and sets in my area of town, my location. So I'm feeling good about this. I'm going to do this. I am going to grow my own food. I'm going to feed me and my family wholesome, nutritious, organic food that I grew with my own 2 hands, that I can come out here every night and I can say, what do I want to make for dinner tonight? How about what's growing in my garden?